The story of Captain Thorne's sky above Corey 9 was always red, filled with dust and ash. This was life on the edge of human space, where everything came with blood and fire. Captain Thorne stood on a broken watchtower, looking at the horizon, where the sun never really set, but spread across the ground like blood from a wound. He wasn't here by choice. Nobody was. Corey 9 was really a prison disguised as a mining camp. It was where broken soldiers, criminals, and forgotten men were sent under the excuse of serving their duty. Thorne had killed too many people during the rebellions to return to normal life. Earth didn't want killers walking its clean streets, so they shipped him here to die slowly while mining rare metals for the Galactic Federation. Even in exile, Thorne carried himself like a soldier. The other men either respected this or feared it. The trouble started with static on the communication channel, garbled noise, then silence. Then the satellites began going dark one by one. They thought it was solar interference or maybe a plasma storm, but deep down, everyone knew it wasn't natural. It was something much worse. At 3 a.m, the sky tore open. The bombardment was silent from inside the bunker. When they came out, there was nothing left. The colony wasn't attacked. It was erased. Children, women, workers, the sick, all gone. Only burnt shadows remained on concrete and ash where lungs used to breathe. The smell of burned flesh hung in the air like it was too stubborn to leave. Above it all, hanging in the sky like gods come to judge, were the Varnac warships. 10 of them, black ships with glowing green veins. They hovered with arrogance. No warning, no demands, no declaration of war, just extermination. Thorne didn't speak when he saw the destruction. He walked through the rubble like a ghost, eyes unblinking, fists clenched. The other survivors watched him, waiting for orders because instincts don't die. Their instincts told them this man wasn't going to beg or run. He was going to kill. What do we do? Cap asked one of the miners-turned soldiers, holding a bleeding arm. We can't fight that. We don't even have a signal tower. Thorne stared at the black sky. We won't signal for help. Then we're dead. No, Thorne said, voice low and sharp. They didn't understand yet, but they would. Corey had been filled with outcasts, murderers, mercenaries, and soldiers, with dishonorable discharges, men who had nothing left to lose. Now they had something, vengeance. It took 2 days to prepare a distress probe. Thorne loaded it with coordinates, codes, and one message, Corey 9. Civilian massacre by Varnac fleet, unprovoked, no survivors. To any remaining human command, you created us to fight your wars. You exiled us when peace was no longer profitable. Now let us do what we were made for. Give us a fleet or give us nothing. We will burn them either way. The probe launched. It wouldn't reach Earth for 6 days. Meanwhile, Thorne gathered the wreckage and began making weapons from the ruins. Drones became emp mines. Power cores from broken generators became explosives. In the shadows of genocide, something ancient was reborn, the will to fight. On the 5th night after the massacre, the temperature on Corey 9 dropped below freezing. Winds cut across the ruins, howling through twisted metal and charred frames of what used to be homes, schools, and shelters, but deep in the old mining tunnels, beneath concrete disguised as collapsed walls, the survivors weren't mourning. They were planning a war. Captain Thorne stood shirtless in the center of the dim chamber. His body was marked with burned scars and faded military tattoos, some older than the younger men around him. A rusted table served as their war map, covered with blueprints salvaged from backup servers and rough sketches drawn in coal and blood. There were 23 survivors, all men. No heroes, no politicians, no diplomats, just killers, rejects, and the type of men Earth never wrote history books about. Yet here they were, rising from the ashes, forged by loss and hate. We can't wait for Earth, Thorne said, pointing at a blinking dot on a torn star chart. If they come, it'll be a PR stunt. Too late to clean. They'll negotiate. As for peace, talk about apologies. He looked up, his eyes dead calm. We're not asking for peace, Davs. A former dropship pilot court-martialed for striking a superior officer leaned forward. Then what's the play, Cap? We got scraps and hollow threats. They've got capital ships. Thorne moved a piece across the map, a black rock marked with a red X. They missed something. The Varnac don't understand desperation. They don't understand what happens when you massacre broken men and leave a few alive. He tapped the map. Sector L9, old weapons cache from the Cold War era, before the treaties. Buried and written off. I used to guard that sector during the border conflicts. Still has a hangar bay underneath. Davs narrowed his eyes. You think it's still stocked? I know it is. Earth forgot it. But I didn't. And we're taking it. Someone scoffed from the back. Merrick. A bitter sniper with tremors in his right hand and a history of friendly fire incidents. And how the hell are we getting there? Half the Varnac fleet is still in orbit like vultures waiting for the smell of hope. Thorne's lips curled into a humorless grin. We're going to give them what they want. The decoy was built using parts of mining equipment. They disguised it as a short-range escape pod, made it broadcast fake life signs, and set its thrusters toward the nearest human outpost, Bait. When the Varnac ship descended to destroy it, Thorne and his men struck. They had spent 3 days crafting improvised plasma rifles from generator coils. It wasn't clean or efficient, but it was brutal. They moved like phantoms, crawling through ash-covered terrain and slipping beneath sensor lines. The moment the Varnac landed, the explosives went off. It wasn't pretty, loud and messy. The sky turned green with Varnac blood and fire. Thorne moved like a machine, unblinking and efficient. He dragged one of the Varnac captains out of the wreckage by the neck, shoved a gun barrel into its jaw, and waited for its black eyes to focus. "You think you know war?" he whispered. "You've never seen what happens when humans stop pretending to be civilized." Then he pulled the trigger. They captured the ship intact, damaged but flyable. "Get us to L9, Thorne said, voice hard as iron. The trip through dead space took 9 hours. The stolen Varnac cruiser groaned the whole way, its systems hating human hands. Lights flickered, oxygen was thin. No beds, no food, just steel, smoke, and silence. Men took turns resting on the floor, curled up with weapons they barely knew how to reload. As they approached Sector L9, something strange happened. No one tried to stop them. Not a single ship, not a sensor ping. The entire region was dead silent. "Something's wrong," Dav said from the pilot seat. This was contested space during the rebellions. Someone should have claimed it. Thorne didn't answer. He knew the Federation had erased this place, buried it like a war crime they didn't want in the books, but it also meant no one had touched it in decades. As they neared the coordinates, the automated defense grid triggered. Blue lights lit up in the asteroid belt. Dozens of old cannons turned and locked onto their stolen ship. "Tell me you can hack it," Merrick muttered. Thorne held up a chip dog tag. "This isn't for hacking." He walked to the panel and slotted the tag into the reader. The screen blinked, then flashed green. "Access granted. Captain Adrian Thorne. Authorized user. Code Blackfire." The hangar opened like a sleeping god yawning after a century of rest. Inside was a graveyard of forgotten war machines, and every last one of them was still functional. They spent the next 8 days restoring the base. Food was synthesized, power rerouted, systems rebooted. The base had weapons Earth hadn't deployed in over 50 years, weapons that had been banned. Antimatter charges, dark missiles, cloaked drones, EMP spiders, orbital skinners, old-school nuclear weapons with failsafe overrides. Technology so unstable that even the most hardened generals back on Earth had chosen diplomacy over deploying them. But Thorne welcomed the madness. They fitted the stolen Varnac cruiser with hybrid tech, alien shields, human engines, and weapons from hell. They painted it black with a red stripe across its side as a warning. They called it Judgment. It wasn't alone. 7 other ships were resurrected from the base, stripped, repaired, and rearmed. Each man became a captain, whether he wanted to be or not. They trained day and night in zero-gravity drills, target acquisition, and boarding simulations. There was no luxury, no forgiveness for mistakes. One of the younger men broke down during a drill, panicking during a decompression test. Thorne didn't yell. He stood over him, silent, staring with cold, pale eyes. Then he said, "They burned your daughter in that colony. Crying won't change that. Killing them will. Get up." And the boy did. Every single one of them did. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were monsters built by loss. On the 9th day, a signal came through. Not from Earth, not from any colony, but from the Varnac fleet. Encrypted in their language, Thorne's systems decrypted it one agonizing syllable at a time. To the human anomaly occupying the dead sector, surrender. You are outnumbered. The Cori 9 operation was authorized. You are not recognized under any sovereign flag. Resistance is suicide. You will not be warned again. Thorne leaned in and typed a reply. Warning received. Return to your masters. Tell them the ashes of Cori 9 are coming to collect. No flag, no politics, just vengeance. We are the Armada, and you've made our purpose clear. He sent it, then he deleted it. They weren't doing this for speeches. They were doing it for retribution. The first raid happened on a Varnac refueling station orbiting KZ Theta. No announcement, no ceremony. The Judgment decloaked 3 kilometers away, fired all 6 plasma rods into the station's core, and warped out in under 10 seconds. The blast wiped the system's moon off the star map. The second strike was worse. They boarded a Varnac science vessel. No military value, just labs. They found documents, charts, and blueprints showing how Corey 9 was selected. The scientists inside had studied human emotional responses, pain thresholds, and trauma recovery times. Corey 9 had been an experiment. Thorne executed every one of them personally. No mercy, no trials. This wasn't justice. This was vengeance. Soon, the Varnac started reacting. They dispatched fleets and patrols, locking down sectors and activating protocols that hadn't been used since the human Varnac Cold War era. But they were too late. Thorne had already activated deep codes embedded in old bases scattered throughout forgotten space. Dozens of other rejected colonies, dumping grounds for humanity's undesirables, had received the message, and one by one, they answered. He wasn't just leading a crew anymore. He was building a movement. A human force formed from men Earth had abandoned. Thorne stood in the command bay of the Judgment, staring at a live feed of the next target, a Varnac orbital city floating above a gas giant. Population, 40,000 civilians, politicians, and generals, all part of the machine. He didn't hesitate. "We strike in 10, he said. Davs frowned. "You sure? No demands, no threats." Thorne's jaw tensed. "They gave us no warning. We return the favor." The Judgment's thrusters lit up like hellfire. The sky was about to fall again. Only this time, it would fall on the Varnac. The orbital city over Verda 3 didn't stand a chance. No alarms, no evacuation. Just black space, and then white hell. The Judgment and its sister ships exited warp less than 4 kilometers. From the city's central ring, they launched in silence. 8 ships armed to the teeth with relic weapons. The rest of humanity had buried deep and promised never to speak of again. A wall of torpedoes streaked across the void, glowing like falling stars. The first barrage turned the agricultural bays into a burning hole. The second melted the sky bridge. By the time the third wave of drones struck, it was already over. The entire station, fortified, shielded, and home to tens of thousands, was reduced to metal carcass and drifting corpses. No survivors, no speeches, no remorse. This was the cost of genocide. Thorne stood on the bridge of the Judgment, hands behind his back, eyes locked on the screen as debris scattered across the stars. For a moment, he said nothing. He just watched. As Varnac civilization cracked like brittle bone, Dav stepped up beside him, his voice low and uncertain. "Cap, you saw the last section. There were non-combatants in there." Thorne's stare didn't waver. "They were complicit." Dav's didn't argue. There was no room for that here. This wasn't a morality mission. This wasn't Earth's type of war with clean kills and televised pity. This was revenge. And revenge didn't care about innocence. 2 days later, they received a message Thorne hadn't expected. It wasn't from the Varnac. It was from Earth High Command. Encrypted and buried under a dozen security layers, the AI translated the voice. Cold, female, bureaucratic to the bone. "Adrian Thorne, you are hereby ordered to cease hostilities against the Varnac Confederacy. Your unauthorized attacks have disrupted intergalactic treaties, risked human Varnac diplomatic relations, and endangered fragile peace corridors. Stand down immediately. Surrender all vessels to the nearest authorized outpost. This is your final warning. Failure to comply will result in your designation as a rogue warlord. Under Article 77 of the Colonial Warfare Act, Earth will not protect you." Silence hung in the command deck like poison. Then the men started laughing. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief, disgust, fury. Davs cursed. They waited until now. After Corey got nuked into nothing. After we buried children with our bare hands. Now they want to lecture us. Merrick spat on the floor. "Screw Earth. They left us to rot years ago." Thorne didn't laugh. He stared at the message again, watching the lines scroll across. "Warlord," he muttered. "That's what they call me now." He turned, voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Then so be it." They stopped hiding after that. No more stealth strikes, no more hit and runs. The Armada of Vengeance went public. Their next target was a Varnac dry dock facility at Veltrac Sea, a superstructure 5 kilometers wide where Varnac dreadnoughts were built and refitted. This time, Thorne broadcast a message live, unencrypted, sent across 50 systems to every species listening. Corey 9 was wiped out in silence. Earth turned its back. The Varnac laughed. "You let it happen, so now we bring fire. This is not war. This is retribution. If you stand with them, burn with them." Within hours, galactic news feeds erupted in panic. Treaty representatives issued emergency statements. Human diplomats disavowed Thorne's actions, called him a terrorist, a factional embarrassment, a relic of Earth's violent past. but on the fringes of colonized space, where miners and forgotten veterans scraped to survive. Thorne became a symbol of rage, of strength, of what humanity used to be when it had teeth. The assault on Veltrac C was the bloodiest yet. They met resistance for the first time, 3 Varnac warships and hundreds of fighter drones. It didn't matter. Thorne's armada fought like demons. The Judgment took 3 direct hits, lost shields, and kept going. Plasma fires roared across the hull. Men screamed. Steel buckled. But Thorne didn't retreat. He ordered a full-speed ramming run through the dry dock's central spine. At impact, the Judgment's nose punctured clean through the reinforced core. Internal charges detonated, flooding the station with fire and rupturing the gravitational core. The explosion was visible from orbit. Afterward, they counted their dead. 14 men gone, burned, crushed, vented into space. Each one was buried in silence, ejected from the airlock, wrapped in scorched banners made from scrap metal. No speeches. Just a toast of recycled whiskey and clenched jaws. We kill them until they remember our names, Thorne said quietly, and they drank to that. Back on Earth, panic set in. Protests broke out in megacities as word spread of Corey 9's erasure and Earth's silence. A leaked report showed that the Federation had known about the Varnac plans weeks in advance. A deal had been struck, a quiet one. Let Corey 9 fall to avoid full war. Collateral damage. Expendable lives. The revelation broke the illusion now. Earth had a problem. Its people were starting to agree with Thorne. That's when they sent the Hammer. An elite fleet with no politics, no restraint. 3 carriers. For dreadnoughts, 30 escort ships. The best humanity had. They were sent not to negotiate. They were sent to erase Thorne. The Hammer found the Armada in the outer rings of the Soren system, setting up a forward station. The Armada had grown, 16 ships now. Many jerry-rigged and held together with fury and duct tape. But each one carrying men who had seen too much to ever go home. Thorne stood on the bridge as the Earth fleet dropped out of warp, massive, shining, untouched by war. They hailed him, Captain Thorne. This is Admiral Jiren under direct orders from Earth High Command. You are outgunned. Stand down. Surrender your ships and crew. You will be taken alive if you comply. This is not a negotiation. Thorne didn't flinch. He activated his own comms and opened the channel to every ship on both sides. Admiral Jiren, you wear the uniform I used to kill for. You hide behind orders I used to believe in. But tell me this. Did Earth send you to avenge Corey 9, or to silence the ones who didn't die quietly? I watched children burn in their sleep. I held men who died choking on ash. I begged for help, and Earth looked away. So now we speak in a language you forgot. Fire, blood, revenge. We're not standing down. You want us? Come bleed for it. The battle began 30 minutes later. The Hammer opened with shock missiles and EMP pulses designed to disable. But Thorne had anticipated it. The Armada ships scattered, hiding behind asteroid fields and deploying stealth drones laced with raw uranium shells. It was chaos, human against human, old brothers turned enemies. But there was a difference. The Armada fought with fury, reckless, and desperate. They weren't trying to survive. They were trying to make every ship that fired on them regret it. 2 of the Hammer's carriers went down. One was ripped open by a suicide run. The other was hit with a stolen Varnac Skinner bomb that stripped armor like paper. The Judgment took another hit, losing the starboard guns. Thorne was thrown against a bulkhead, blood running down his face, but he crawled back up. Keep firing, he growled. Don't stop until every last one of them remembers Corey 9. After 3 hours, the Hammer retreated. They hadn't expected resistance like this. And Earth hadn't expected its best to lose. That night, the Armada celebrated. Not like victors, but like men who knew they wouldn't last much longer, but would make their end mean something. Thorne sat in silence, staring at a photo pulled from the ruins of Corey 9. A little girl in a blue dress, smiling. She couldn't have been more than 7. He traced her face with a bloody fingertip. I don't even know her name, he whispered, behind him. Merrick spoke. We're making them remember. Cap, one by one. Thorne nodded slowly. Not enough. Not yet. The dead girl in the photograph haunted Thorne. Not because of who she was, but because he didn't know. He didn't know her name, her family, her voice. Whether she screamed when the Varnac bombs dropped or if it was over before she could open her eyes. She represented every life Earth wrote off as acceptable loss. After the Hammer limped away from Soren, Earth went silent. Not a word, not a whisper. Like they were recalculating. But Thorne didn't wait. He had leads, data shards ripped from the wreckage of Varnac science vessels. Encrypted logs that Merrick and Davs had been digging through nonstop. At first, it all looked like dry bureaucratic garbage. But Davs had a knack for finding meaning in the mess. And what he found made his blood run cold. It wasn't just Corey 9, Davs said one night, pulling Thorne aside. There were more. Thorne's jaw clenched. What do you mean, more for colonies? Not as big, scattered, remote. Not all human, but the Varnac hit them too. Exact same method. No warning, no demands, just full deletion. And here's the kicker. Every one of them had a joint research station. Joint as in Varnac and human. Bingo. Davs tapped a string of decrypted lines on the screen. We thought Corey 9 was just about resources or vengeance, but this was about control, suppression, silence. They weren't just exterminating people, they were covering something up. The break came from a corrupted AI log recovered from one of the research pods orbiting the wreckage of Corey 9. Merrick spent 6 sleepless nights patching the fragments together. It was an old project name, Project Veilfire. At first glance, it sounded like another Black Ops experiment, but the data went deeper, older. This wasn't post-war. This was pre-treaty, before the Varnac agreements, before Corey 9 even existed. The project was human-led, but Varnac-funded. A joint endeavor cloaked under planetary defense research. But what they were researching wasn't weapons. It was people. Human minds, pain tolerance, emotional trauma, the neurological pathways of grief and vengeance. The very things that made humans unpredictable in warfare. Davs scrolled through page after page of test logs. They ran simulations, thousands. They induced death scenarios in AI models, then tested psychological breakdowns in clone minds. They were trying to find a way to predict us. Merrick chimed in from the corner, bitter. They couldn't understand how we fought, how we came back after losing everything, so they studied us like lab rats. Thorne stared at the screen, then down at his own shaking hands. He knew that feeling, the rage that made you see red, the emptiness that made you charge into a fleet with no backup and no hope. He looked back at the logs. They'd weaponized it. And when they realized they couldn't control it, they buried it with bombs, with genocide, with Corey 9. The truth changed everything. The Armada wasn't just a rogue fleet anymore. They were the result of Project Veilfire. They were the experiment the Varnac couldn't finish and Earth wouldn't dare acknowledge. That's why they let Corey 9 burn, Thorne muttered, pacing the room. Like a caged animal. It wasn't just political, it was containment. They couldn't let this slip out, Merrick scoffed. So they built monsters. And now they're afraid of what we became. Thorne slammed his fist into the table, denting the steel. They should be. The next move had to be different. This wasn't about sending a message anymore. It was about exposing the whole game. Thorne needed proof, something undeniable. And he knew where to get it. The Varnac core archive buried inside a diplomatic station, orbiting the neutral world of Bashar. Technically untouchable. A library for interspecies cooperation, sacred according to treaties, which meant Earth would never bomb it. And the Varnac wouldn't risk contaminating their own holy archive. That's where Thorne went. They arrived cloaked under false IFF codes, a dead merchant vessel from a forgotten sector. They boarded at midnight cycle. No alarms, no guards, just protocol droids and floating archivists with no loyalty to blood or politics. They found the server core in a sealed chamber 3 floors beneath the diplomatic dome. Davs cracked it in 20 minutes. What they found was worse than even Thorne expected. Video logs. Meeting recordings, black budget signatures, human diplomats and Varnac generals together, authorizing Corey 9. Not just letting it happen, but planning it. Containment is preferable to confrontation. Project Veilfire must not fall into civilian hands. Collateral loss acceptable within the outline projections. Thorne watched the files in silence. No one spoke. The final video showed a familiar face, Admiral Jiren, the very one who led the hammer against them. If the fringe colonies must die to preserve galactic peace, so be it. History will forget them. The feed cut. Thorne's fist trembled, not from fear, from restraint. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a cover-up of a war crime. They didn't just ignore Corey 9. They murdered it to bury their past. Thorne uploaded every file to the Armada's mainframe. Then he sent a message, not encrypted, not hidden, to every world, every ship, every system. A full info dump, visual proof, audio proof. Classified memos, body counts, footage of the burning colony, the screams, the silence. Afterward, he attached a single sentence at the end. You wanted to know why we fight. This is why. This is what Earth buried in ash. This is what the Varnac paid for with blood. The galaxy lit up like wildfire. Protests turned to riots. Federation buildings on Earth were firebombed. The Varnac consulate in the inner colonies was stormed. Even military officers began to desert. Soldiers who had once seen Thorne as a traitor now saw him as a truth-teller. The Armada of Vengeance became more than a rogue fleet. It became a revolution. More ships joined. More defectors came. Entire colonies swore allegiance not to Earth, not to the Federation, but to justice, a justice born in fire, led by a man Earth tried to forget. But Earth wasn't done. They couldn't afford to be. And this time, they sent someone worse than the hammer. Not ships, not armies. They sent a ghost, a man named Commander Rick, Thorne's former squad leader. Presumed dead, a tactician, a butcher. The only man Thorne had ever followed without question. And the only man Thorne had ever betrayed. Now, he was alive, and he was coming with a single ship and a promise to finish what Corey 9 started. The name Rick hit Thorne like a blade sliding between ribs. He hadn't heard it in years. Not since the Sandria operation. Not since the last time he wore Earth's flag on his shoulder and believed in orders more than his own conscience. Rick was never loud, never showy. He was the kind of man who killed you quietly, left your body in a ditch, and walked away without emotion. A perfect soldier, the type the Federation used when they wanted something done without it ever being spoken of again. The message came across encrypted military channels, old codes that only worked if you once had the rank to use them. The voice was calm, mechanical, not a threat, but a promise. Adrian, you made your point. You turned yourself into the thing they were afraid of. Now they've turned me loose. You and I both know how this ends. Come alone. No fleet, no crew, no theatrics. One-on-one at the graveyard. Sector 7 Lambda. Where it all started. Thorne didn't hesitate. Prep my pod, he ordered. Dav stepped forward instantly. No way, Cap. This is suicide. You think he's coming alone? I don't care. You don't walk into a ghost's hands. Not when we've come this far. Thorne's voice was ice. I gave Rick my loyalty once. I broke it when I exposed what they were doing. He doesn't need tricks if he wants me dead. It won't be with fleets. He flew alone. One man, one ship, stripped of weapons save for a plasma blade locked beneath the console. The old kind, manual trigger, exposed core, unstable if overused. A relic for a relic. The flight to Sector 7 Lambda took 6 hours. It was a forgotten place. A battlefield from the Sovereign Rebellions long since silenced. The dead still floated. There, thousands of suits and whole fragments orbiting a moon cracked down the middle. No one salvaged here. It was cursed ground. A place where orders went too far and soldiers stopped being men. It was where Thorne and Rick first became killers, where they stopped asking questions. He landed on an old Federation cruiser, rusted and buried in asteroid rock. The hangar was partially sealed, atmosphere flickering in and out. As he stepped onto the cracked floor, his boots crunched glass and bone. And there he was, Rick. Same posture, same face. Time hadn't touched him, just hardened what was already cold. He wore no insignia, just black. A thin scar ran across his jaw now. But his eyes were the same steel-gray voids that used to watch Thorne's back. Without flinching, Adrian, he said quietly, Rick. No handshake, no salute, just a wolf circling a grave. Rick was the first to speak. You should have died with the others. That would have been cleaner. Thorne stepped closer. So that's it. Earth's final offer. A bullet from the past. No offer. Rick said, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to clean up the mess. Thorne laughed once, hollow. The mess? You mean the truth. You mean Corey 9. The project you knew about. You knew, Rick. Don't lie to me. Rick didn't flinch. I knew. We both did. We signed the same papers. You lied to them, Thorne growled, stepping into his face. You let those families die. You let the kids burn. For what? To protect Earth's clean little fantasy of peace. It wasn't peace I protected, Rick said. It was balance. Chaos like yours spreads. It makes martyrs out of maniacs. You're not a hero, Adrian. You're a consequence. I didn't ask to be a hero. No, Rick said flatly. You asked to be remembered. And now they'll remember you as the man who started a war that never had to happen. They stared at each other. No wind, no music, no speeches, just memories that tasted like ash. Then Thorne said, let's finish it. And the blades came out. Rick's blade hummed with perfect energy. Military issue, high-efficiency plasma edge, clean, precise. Thorne's blade sputtered as it ignited, flickering blue with unstable pulses. Half dead, just like him, their first clash sent sparks across the chamber. Rick moved like a machine, precise strikes, all center mass, no emotion. Thorne fought like a storm, wild, brutal, raw. Every strike was personal, every movement pulled from years of buried hate. Metal screamed. The floor cracked beneath their boots. Thorne took a slice across the ribs, hissed in pain, then slammed his shoulder into Rick's chest hard enough to send them both crashing through an old console. Still sloppy, Rick muttered, pushing up. Thorne bared his teeth, still a coward. Rick charged, blades met again. this time locking at the hilt, sparks showering them both. You think this changes anything? Rick snarled. You burn a few stations, kill a few diplomats, and what, you think Earth turns around and says sorry? Thorne growled back. I don't care if they say anything. I want them to feel it. I want every last one of those cowards to wake up screaming, remembering the day they created me. Then you're no different from the Varnac. Rick spat. You're just another monster screaming for fire. Better a monster that tells the truth, Thorne roared, than a soldier who dies with a lie in his mouth. Rick swept Thorne's legs, dropped him to the floor, then raised his blade for the final strike. But Thorne